I'm Everett Abrams, the Wizard of Wood, and I'm here today to talk to you about cleaning and restoration, leaving money on the table, and the difference between cleaning and restoration. First of all, if we use the word restoration more often, we're signaling to the customer that we're doing something a little above and beyond cleaning, so they're going to expect that the price is going to be a little bit higher. We're talking about restoration versus cleaning, so we want to get into the habit of using the term restoration. So are we leaving money on the table by not using proper terminology, better terminology, and also explaining our craft and what we're doing? When it applies to wood restoration, restoration is the word. Whether it's deck, wood, fence, cedar, logs, any wood, it's restoration. So anyway, we don't want to leave money on the table. What makes us money? It's the restoration, okay? As we go, the first thing we just have to decide in cleaning and restoration is, are we cleaning or are we restoring? And the first thing we have to talk about is bleach and bleach use in cleaning. When we restore, we're usually doing something above and beyond just using bleach or bleach in a detergent. And that's where we separate the cleaning from the restoration. Usually with wood restoration, it's going to be a two-part at least procedure. If we're cleaning, usually it's just one part. Most people do not even realize how bleach works and how it applies to wood restoration. Bleach actually reacts with the first thing it comes in contact with. And in knowing that, it's important because a lot of times we go out to a wood surface and it is beyond just cleaning. So if we have a deck and up along the house we have organic growth, it's kind of covered, it's shaded, we got mold, we got mildew, we got algae, we have that organic growth going. And then we walk out further to the deck where it's more sun exposed, there is no organic growth. So it's almost inconceivable to think that if we apply bleach to this deck to use as a cleaner, that it's going to react the same way and perform the same way where we have the organic growth and where we have the grade wood. So it hits the organic growth, it never really touches the wood, it doesn't effectively restore the wood, and yet out where we put it directly on the wood, it's going to work differently there. So the idea is bleach really something we want to use to begin with when we're restoring wood or trying to get that to an optimal appearance? So that's one part of it. The other thing with bleach is it works very well on a non-porous surface. So if we're working on something that's firm, like vinyl siding on a house, we'll get a more effective result there. And we use bleach or sodium hypochlorite a lot of times when we're in that scenario cleaning a home. But when we get to wood, wood is more porous. And what happens is the roots of the organic growth actually get into the surface. And the chlorine bleach, the sodium hypochlorite, does not get in there to attack the roots as well as it should. So it may not, again, be the effective cleaner we want for restoring wood. There's a time and a place for it, but this may not be when you're initially restoring the wood. And then you have to determine whether or not this is even good for wood restoration. The Forest Products Lab discusses using a solution still to this day of 4 parts water to 1 part sodium hypochlorite with a detergent as an effective deck cleaner. So if they recommend it, it's a matter of using it and not misusing it, which is what happens in most cases. So again, we have to summarize, is bleach what we want to use in that scenario to restore wood? Most of the time it's not. The best time to use bleach would actually be in the maintenance of the wood. We go back to do the subsequent cleaning and resealing or staining, because at that time the mold and mildew is on the surface of the stain that we have already used. And we're really just doing a light clean, remove the mold, mildew, dirt, grime, so forth, and then recoating. So the bleach application is probably much better on the maintenance cleanings than it is on the actual restoration. So now that we've distinguished that, we talk about soft washing. And soft washing kind of ties in a lot to the sodium hypochlorite, because sodium hypochlorite is used a lot in soft washing, especially when it comes to building and home residential cleanings. So can we use soft washing in wood restoration? The question really becomes how much pressure are we actually putting onto the wood surfaces? And while we don't need pressure to restore wood, we actually need the right cleaners, restorers, strippers, and brighteners to restore the wood. It's not the pressure. We do, though, need a moderate amount of pressure to remove gray and decomposed wood fibers from the wood surfaces. By just putting sodium hypochlorite on and bleaching those grayed wood fibers, what happens is it may appear to look better than the condition it currently is in, but that doesn't mean that once it's sealed or stained that we don't look at it 6 months and a year later and see it blotchy, because those gray wood fibers have now separated from the wood. So what we want to do is put a moderate amount of pressure, just so that, and it could be garden hose pressure, it could be soft washing with just a little bit more pressure. It could be your pressure washer using somewhere between 3,000 and 1,000 psi depending on the job. I'm just giving a range, but that will rinse those grayed wood fibers off, and then you can seal or stain. So we want to get rid of those. The other thing that's important with soft washing that a lot of people skip is they do not pre-wet. There's a really important part in wood restoration that involves pre-wetting. So no matter what you were ever taught before, just kind of throw it out the window and follow along with this, because it really makes a lot of sense. Water can also be a barrier. And the fact that water is a barrier, what happens is we put that onto the wood, it fills the cells of the wood, and then what happens is when we put our product on the wood, whether it be a brightener, a stripper, restorer, a cleaner, it's going to be on the surface, which is closer to the surface is where the organic growth is. If we're stripping coating off, we want that on the surface. We don't want to put our product on and have it soak in like a sponge on dry wood and then get below the surface where, one, it's going to be harder to rinse out, and two, you won't get an effective clean, restore, or brighten of the wood. So pre-wet the wood, pre-wet it real well, even soft washing, apply your product, it's closer to the surface, let it dwell the proper amount of time, and then we rinse. So we can soft wash it, it's just a matter of following a couple of simple rules. One, the most important, is pre-wetting. Okay, there's 4 parts to a standard that actually everyone should adhere to when it comes to wood. And those 4 things, if we do that, we can call it restoration. The first one is to pre-wet all the water, wood surfaces and fill those cells of water like we just talked about. The second is to use cleaners, strippers, restorers, brighteners, and not use just pressure. So we want to use the proper products needed for that job and rely on dwell times. Then we want to rinse, rinse, and rinse again. We do not want to leave any products, chemicals, anything in or on the wood. We want to make sure that we rinse those off. That will dry out the wood, and it could also affect the coatings. Then the fourth one, after we've done all that, is we do want to apply a coating, a sealer, or a stain to help preserve the wood. If you do those 4 things, you've done restoration. So that's the standard. Okay, typically we'll find a deck, or we'll get to a project, and it has anything from a solid, a semi-solid, whatever coating on it, and we're left with, what are we going to do now? How are we going to determine what would be the next step? Are we going to just clean this and recoat? Are we going to be stripping? Is it a water base or an oil base? There's a lot of questions. So that's what we have to determine. Is it water base or is it oil base? And if it's water base, one of the things we're going to do is test that. And what we do is we use alcohol wipes. And if you use an alcohol wipe and the stain comes off on it, then it's a water base. If it doesn't, it's an oil base. You could also come up with a test kit that has the different products in it, so that you could actually use this as a marketing tool when doing the estimate, where you actually apply the stripper, you start to do the estimate, you go back and do the rinse, do the brightener, and then you can see if it's coming off easily, it's probably an oil base. If it's a little more difficult, it's probably going to be a water base, and that'll determine what type of stripper you're going to go with. Okay, so you could do a test kit, see for yourself with your products and also that you're using, and also show the customer what the wood could look like. You could use also the alcohol wipes. Now, what most people don't realize is the easiest thing is ask the customer. See if they have an old can. It could be in the basement, it could be in the shed, it could be in the garage. Ask them what they used last time, but ask for the can. Don't assume they know. In today's world, a lot of people just say, oh, I got something at Home Depot, just because it's easy to say that. Don't assume that that's the case. Ask to see the can. And then each manufacturer has different product lines. So it may be a water base, it may be an oil base, maybe a semi-solid, maybe a solid. You want to check those things out. Get your good background information on, because it'll help you attack the situation moving forward. Okay. One of the things that most people are not realizing is before 2009, most products were oil-based, and we used a lot of sodium hydroxide based strippers, and that was the norm for the industry. Fast forward, as the federal government changed VOC compliance and states went even beyond those regulations, it was harder and harder to use those products. So a lot of those products became reformulated, weren't the same products. There became hybrids, water-based, all kinds of different products out there. With that, we put the cart before the horse, and it made our work a lot harder. Now, the cart's kind of getting back behind the horses, and there's a lot of other products out there that we realize to help us maintain and restore and strip, and all just ways to make the job come out so much nicer and so much easier. If you're going to do this kind of work, the idea is to not be frustrated with it, but have the right products to make it fun and make it easier to do. Solvent-based strippers are one of those tools that we can use. They used to be solvent-based strippers, heavy white paste, brush it on, really difficult with a long dwell time. It's not so much anymore. Solvent-based strippers have come a long ways. With those solvent-based strippers, we have some for different types of substrates, whether it's concrete, whether it's wood. We have some for paint removal. We have some for stain removal. I mean, there's just so many out there. It used to be, like I said, all brush. Now we can spray those even with an airless sprayer. Sometimes, this is a good time to bring this up, the best thing to do is to get outside of our four walls. So since 2009, if we're sitting inside the same four walls and we're using the same products that we did even prior to 2009, then we're kind of putting that square peg in a round hole, and that just doesn't work. So by finding out some of the other products that are available and other tools that are available, it helps make our job easier. Finding out about solvent-based strippers will help make your job a lot easier. They can be sprayed with an airless sprayer. Some of the log cabin people have been doing this for a few years now, to great success. There's no reason that we can't do the same thing with the decks and fences that we run into as well. The point being, though, is these are a little bit more expensive, so you have to transfer that cost over to your customer as well. So there'll be a little bit more in expense, the price will be a little bit higher, but the result that you can deliver will make the customer happy, and they're willing to pay usually when you can make that happen for them. Okay, one of the ways that we handle solvent-based strippers, if there is a heavy coating, it's solid, we know it's going to be a little tough, we just change the way we do business. Instead of going to there in the morning or during the day and applying and waiting our dwell time, we could actually go at the end of the day, apply the solvent-based stripper. If it's a deck, we may put the tarp over top of it, and then we come back the next morning and we rinse it off, and that works as well either. So sometimes it's just a matter of changing how you do business, and change is just important no matter what we do, and we have to change with the times, change with the coatings, and that's what we're doing. It works really well on the coatings that you don't know as well. So if you can't identify a coating, solvent-based stripper, it's always better to go to the next step up so that you don't have to do this twice, do some extra sanding, that kind of stuff. Okay, solvent-based strippers, we don't want to be afraid of the unknown. So find out about them, use them, and you'll see your job becomes a lot easier. And they're really easy to use, they're not hard. Okay, the process, the way it should work is we want to apply the product. It'll dwell on the wood. Most of the time it'll darken the wood up. We rinse it off. It leaves the wood darker. That's what an alkaline on wood does. Despite what anyone tells you, or some of the other people out there that will talk about wood restoration or process. You do not put an acid on first in the process and then apply an alkaline. That's not how it works. We apply an alkaline first, and then the acid is used to neutralize the surface and brighten the wood. You sure wouldn't put on the brightener first and then go and put on an alkaline that's going to darken the wood to an unnatural state. This is the way it should work. Dwell, apply your product, let it dwell, rinse, brighten the wood. Okay, so what does that mean? As we had the first picture, we come back to this and we see the wood is all nicely restored. We got rid of a solid stain, and that's the way it should work. This is the fun, the easy part. The customers come out and say, wow, I can't believe it. You guys are great. You have customer for life. Some examples of solvent-based strippers. There are quite a few out there. This is just an example to show you that it is no longer just one size fits all, that there are different variations and product lines along with these solvent-based strippers as well. Expect to pay $40, $50 a gallon for these. And also, you won't get the coverage you do from some of the other traditional products we use. You're probably only going to get about 100 square foot a gallon. Okay, some other chemicals and methods that some people may be familiar with and may not be familiar with that also help us. The first one is sodium metasilicate. Sodium metasilicate is been out for a long time. I mean, as far as a product we could use, people just didn't apply it so much to the wood restoration part of it. But sodium metasilicate is actually a strong cleaner or a weak stripper. It has lifting ability. In composite deck cleaning, they've been using sodium metasilicate as a product for a while because that lifting ability helps lift the mold and mildew out of their textured surface. So sodium in many composite deck cleaners. For us on wood, what happens is those decks I alluded to in the beginning about heavy organic growth, they will actually get underneath the organic growth, lift up, and then also work into the wood, restoring the wood. And it also help even up those surfaces without fuzzing it up like a stripper would. So sodium metasilicate becomes your stronger cleaner, really good in those situations with high organic growth, and yet it has a little bit of stripping ability. So if there was a little bit of stain residue underneath the benches or where the table might have been or where the mat was, it'll help in those areas without fuzzing up the wood. Putting sodium hydroxide or a stripper on bare wood, as some people have used it to clean, they often complain and say, oh, I fuzzed up the wood, I left it on too long. Because it's meant to strip off a coating, not to be put on bare wood. Sodium metasilicate is a little bit of a game changer for a lot of people. The next one would be butyl. And butyl, people are adding to the sodium hydroxide to help enhance or boost their existing stripper when it comes to water base. And again, that is now putting a square peg in a square hole. So we're actually addressing that. Butyl, if you're going to add it, should probably be something like a cup to a gallon of your product that you're currently using, and that will help. Sodium hydroxide can be used as a cleaner, so I don't want to say that it can't be, but it's a matter of using it correctly. In the day of soft washing and too much chemicals and misusing a lot of chemicals, this is one where we can misuse it very easily. So whatever your solution, if you're using a concentrate or chemical, however you're mixing it, whatever way you're mixing it, if you're going to use it as a cleaner, a good rule of thumb would be to cut it in half, your dilution, to use as a cleaner. That will still help you with your organic growth, still attack some of the smaller residue areas of stain and so forth without fuzzing up the wood so much. And then there are other products out there that are coming out more often. There's always changes. The best thing to do is talk to your distributor, find out about some of the other products that are coming out, and you'll find that the job becomes much easier. Keep putting that square peg in a square hole. All right. One of the other options that we do run into is we have been running into some of the tough coatings that people like Rust-Oleum and Behr put out. Not getting too far into their products as much, but the type of products. And these products are the ones that are the heavy coatings that you see guys barefooting on commercials. They have this composite look to them. What happens is that grittiness in it, they're ceramic microspheres, and they do not easily come off. They don't strip off with traditional strippers. Solvent-based strippers are probably the best way to go if you're going to strip them, but if you have to sand any of it, the ceramic microspheres, they just tear the sandpaper up, so you're going to use a lot more on those. What we try to do is, with these, they'll come off in sheets where they want to come off, and where they don't want to come off, they don't come off at all. But also with solid stains and paints that people put on a deck surface that have peeling problems, what we try to offer the customer is to take those and get rid of the peeling. The vertical is not usually the problem. So we can keep a solid on the vertical and then bring the horizontal surfaces or the floor, the decking, back to either a natural or semi-transparent. So two-tone decks might be a good option. It's easier for us because we don't want to be stripping vertical surfaces, one. Two, it brings down the number so it's more manageable for the customer to do a two-tone deck than have to strip it all off and start over. To pay for that, they have to sometimes say to themselves, wow, why am I doing this? I might as well just rebuild the deck, because the prices do get high to try to remove some of those solid coatings. So one of the options, two-tone decks. Again, trying to get a square peg in a square hole. Manage the customer's perception, try to find a budget, a way. Up in the Northeast where I'm from, we do a lot of the Cape Cod look with the gray and the white. You could do that with a natural, you could do a semi-transparent, doesn't have to be a white railing. It could be a brown and beige, it could be a brown solid and a brown natural on the floor. There's different ways you could two-tone it to match it up. So another option. All right, the industry is constantly changing. So we always have new coatings, new cleaners, new strippers, and new tools. The first one, the new coatings, is a lot of times we have emulsified products where they emulsify the oil into the water product, a water-based product. So it might say oil formula, but then you turn around the can and it says clean with warm soapy water. These are also difficult to work with. So knowing what products we can use really helps with the coatings. The new cleaners and strippers that are out there, they help also. And staying informed, staying in touch, finding these, using these, practicing with those. And when I talk about practicing, when I say practice, you can use pallets, old sections of deck, fences, old wood. Practice on these, see what they look like, how they work, before you do them on somebody else, or use them on somebody else's deck, their fence, or other, especially, I hope somebody's not considering practicing on somebody's siding or log cabin. That would be a little irresponsible, although I have seen some of that before. Some of the new tools that are out there as well, just for an example, is an Osborne brush, and we'll get to that. An Osborne brush is used to defelt or take the fuzziness off of the wood. It's used a lot in log cabin restoration and prepping the logs. And we can use that for decks on the balusters when they get fuzzy. We can use it on fences, and it'll cut your time immensely. So just another one as far as the tools that are out there. Do you want to fail? If you do, just keep doing the same thing over and over that you've been doing. Don't take any of the advice I'm giving in this video. If you want to live before 2010, just keep using your sodium hydroxide stripper that you used in 2009 and before. Not recognizing that any of the coatings have changed, that the products have changed. And keep trying to fit that square peg in a round hole. Add products and your equipment to your arsenal, and your job becomes much more fun, much more easier, which I alluded to earlier. You still may need to sand, even though we did all this. There may be some problem areas. I mentioned earlier about a mat. I mentioned about the umbrella stand under the table that's protected. Don't assume just because you use these other products, it doesn't mean it's going to be 100% every time. We actually work on what's called a 90-10 rule. We tell the customer we're trying to get 90% or better off, and the other 10% we'll address by sanding, buffing, and that kind of stuff. That way we set the expectation that we're not trying to get 100% off. That way they don't call us and say, hey, well, there's still 10% of it on there, and I don't want you to stain the deck until that's off either. That's why we tell them ahead of time it's the 90-10 rule, okay? So you still may need to do a little sanding. Some of the sanders you're going to use, and it's good to keep in your arsenal, is not just one sander. A floor sander is good. It saves a lot of time. Why buy belt sanders and palm sanders going across a deck or anything when you could also just run a floor sander across there? A lot of people I know, I talk to them and say, hey, we rent a floor sander, we rent a floor sander. We've run it a dozen times a year. Well, a dozen times a year, you probably paid the rental company for that sander. You could have bought it yourself. You can find some used, and you can find them new, various pricing. If you're buying new, $1,600 probably and up would be expected. If you buy something used, obviously it'll be below that, and you could get in that way. Also, another tip real quick would be check with your rental companies. They may be selling an older one. You could use that to break into if you're looking at, starting out slow. If you're a lot of people say, hey, use a drum sander. Those people that say use a drum sander probably have never done a deck before or used a sander on a deck. If they did, they wouldn't use one. You want to use one of the vibrating orbital sanders, usually 12 by 18. And what happens is they have a piece of sandpaper, a pad, vibrate across, and they follow the contour of the wood. Most of the time when we get to wood, it's aged, and what happens is it's cupped a little bit on the outside. If you were to take a drum sander that we use inside all the time with a floor, now you could use a drum sander if you know how to use it on a hardwood deck, but cedar, pressure treated, the softwoods, they're going to curl at the edge. So you run that drum across it, and what you do is you hit the outsides, but then the valley or the cup in the wood never gets touched. And then you have stains still left in there. So anybody who's used a drum sander knows that that's happened. So a drum sander, I've heard it mentioned, is not really the tool we want, okay? Palm sanders, another thing we always use is a generator. We're talking about restoration. We're talking about professional. We're talking about making money here. If I have to use somebody's electric, that says I'm not really a professional, in my opinion. The generator says, hey, these guys they know what they're doing. If I run that floor sander, I don't want to throw their breaker. If I run an airless sprayer, I don't want to throw their breaker. I don't know if they're home. I don't know if the GFI is outside. I don't know if it's inside, which is a lot of homes on the inside of the house off the deck. Maybe the refrigerator's tied to that. Maybe the refrigerator shuts off. Maybe they're on vacation. You don't have to worry about any of that. What happens if you go out and the customer didn't know that the electric wasn't working and you were relying on that? If you have a generator, guess what? You never have to reschedule and you're not out of business. Okay, so a generator. If you are going to run a generator, use quality gauge extension cords. Don't buy cheap extension cords because they may not run your sander or your sprayers and other equipment. If you do sand decks, they do make tools that are very interesting. They make, Black & Decker has one that has a tapered edge to get underneath the railing and on top of the deck where you can't get to. So there are specialty tools out there as well. The Osborne brushes I mentioned earlier, they come in 80 and 120 grit, 4-inch and 6-inch. There are other companies out there that make products that are similar as well. And basically these go on a grinder, and when the grinder's running, these things open up, they're flat, and you can buff out your fuzzies and prep the wood surfaces. Our generator, moisture meters. Nothing else says more professional. If you're buying an oil-based product and you have to determine that your moisture level is below 15% or below, then what you want to do is go out with take half a dozen different readings all over the deck. Sprinklers could have been running, morning dew, that kind of stuff, and make sure that your moisture level is correct. Customer looking at you says, what are these guys doing? Oh, we're checking the moisture level. We don't want to stain or seal, if it's got any, if it's too wet. If it's too wet, the stain or seal or the coating can only go in as far as the moisture. So that's why we want it dry. Again, you're saying you're professional. Infrared thermometer is another one that's really important. A lot of people do not use these. And you say, well, why is it important? Well, we always take, and if you look on cans, the manufacturer will say, well, don't stain over 90 degrees, and they take the ambient temperature. I would tell you that the surface temperature is more important than the ambient temperature. And the reason we say that is there's something called flash drying. Flash drying can be not just the coatings, but also could be your products as well. If you have a long dwell time and you need a stripper or your cleaner to dwell on a wood surface, if it's hot and you throw the product on and it just instantly dries, it doesn't work, then it has to be ineffective. If we do that with a coating, if that coating was supposed to penetrate the wood and it instantly hits on there and we call it flash drying, it's not going to work correctly. It will not penetrate. It will not hold up well. Most of the time these end up peeling. So one of the things we'll do is take an infrared thermometer and check the surface temperature. Most people, when they start using these, are very surprised. You could have an 85-degree cloudy day. Doesn't mean it's not 95 or 100 degrees on that surface. You could be 85, 90 degrees outside in the sun, and you take a reading, and it's over 130 degrees pretty easily. When those temperatures get that hot, you may not want to do that, seal or stain that surface that day. Or you may do the verticals and save the horizontals for the next morning, but you have to adjust. Infrared thermometers will help you. Oh, again, professional. Okay, you're telling the customers we're professional. Okay, oil-based stains and sealers, they're usually very easy to strip. Not much has changed with many of those from the past, so that one kind of is pretty easy. But the problem is the industry is moving away from a lot of those, and I alluded to the hybrids. What happens as we move away from the oils and we move away from those products that we used to always rely on, it does become a little tougher. A lot of contractors have become frustrated, just as homeowners have, in how the products perform. The fact that some of them do peel. I can't strip these water base off. I hear a lot of times, you know, the so-called people that call themselves experts at cleaning and staining and restoring wood, but yet all they do is new wood or old wood. They don't bother stripping, they don't bother any of that kind of stuff. You know, so there's a lot of opportunity out there in the fact that even though these coatings are out there, people have put them down, they've applied them, somebody has to work with them, somebody has to maintain them. They have to be restained or resealed. So those people that are walking away are creating an opportunity for you and for the with the customer. All right, water-based stains and sealers becoming more and more prominent. They're also becoming a lot easier to use. There are some that can be applied to wet wood. There are some that do penetrate. They're not all film formers. Fallacy. Everybody thinks water-based, all their film formers, they won't come off with sodium hydroxide-based strippers. They don't penetrate, blah, blah, blah. Old school, old news, not true. They do extend the season over an oil base. Oil base, if we have to have that 15% moisture, there are times of the year in different parts of the United States where, you know, in October, you're not going to get that. So you're out of business in the oil base. November, December, you're out of business. Water base could extend your season a month or more, both before and later. Also, one of the reasons a lot of contractors get upset in the wood restoration business is rain. We have a rainy season, the scheduling gets all messed up. This isn't just us. This is landscapers, anybody who works outside. Rain affects them. If I'm a landscaper and I've added wood restoration and decks to my business, I get frustrated because when it's not raining, not only do I have to catch up on my cutting and my lawns, but I also have a problem with the decks because the first day it's nice out, everybody's calling, when are you staining my deck? Water base, a little bit more forgiving. You could either stain the same day, the next day, but quicker. You don't have to rely as much on the weather. So it does create an option on that side as well. Stain the same day, stain the next day. As I alluded to, water-based stains and sealers are out there that do penetrate and they do are easy to maintain. Having the right equipment makes a big difference. Regarding staining, the optimal, most recommended is a brush application. Just because a brush application is mentioned, people don't talk about the types of brushes. You could, and people do, just use a paintbrush. It doesn't hold seal or stain very well. It leaves brush marks. So we use what's called a China bristle brush. They also have hybrid where it's China bristle and polyester. They hold a lot of product. You don't have to dip it in and like you do paint and glop it on. You can put a moderate amount. It goes a long ways. And they're also threaded, so you could use a pole. They come in different widths, so you could use a shorter or a less width brush on balusters, or if you're in the South, the pickets. But you also can use a wider brush on the floors and your horizontal surfaces. Now, with that being said, there are other types of brushes. There's lamb's wool pads and so forth. And actually, you could use a truck washing brush or a broom that's a soft bristle as well. People don't realize that. The person that's written most of the standards for the industry is Sam Williams from the Forest Products Laboratory. And he used to mop. his sealer on with the old slop mop. He used to mop them. Same thing here. There are other ways to do that. So we have lamb's wool, we have other types of brushes, they're threaded pads, and so it's not just brushes. The one thing I would say as I'm talking about this though, is don't use rollers. Use brushes, use your sprayers. If you use sprayers, back brush or get your drips up, but don't use a roller. And the reason we don't use a roller is when you roll a section, you do a couple of coats. Then when you go to the next section, you do a couple coats, but where it overlaps, you put 4, 5, 6 coats on there. And on a deck, what happens is it might look good initially, but as it wears, it's going to leave stripes where it overlapped that many times. And then what happens when you go back, you either have to strip or sand to get rid of that stripe, and you just can't stain over it. So rollers are usually not good for the contractor or the professionals. Do you provide actual wood samples for your customer? I like the fact that I want to see, and I want the customer to see what the product is actually going to look like on wood. I don't rely on trifolds or color charts, that kind of thing. I use that to get an idea, but I actually want them to see what it's going to look like on the wood first. What we do, and it works out very well, is we go out, because we don't want to commit to how much we're going to get off of it, how the level of restoration that we're going to provide. We have a good idea, but that doesn't mean it always works out that way. I don't want to be tied to somebody that says, oh, I want a clear natural on there, and there's still some residue, and a clear natural will only accentuate the imperfections. So I don't commit to a coating, but we do have the coatings on pieces of wood, and we can actually come out after we restore it, the day we restore it, and leave the samples. They come home, see what it looks like on the actual wood, and then whether it's pressure treated or cedar or whatnot, and say, okay, this is the one I want. And we can come out and stain or seal the deck, fence, or wood home. A wood putty tip. Depending on where you are, some areas of the country have a problem with carpenter bees. Some don't. Doesn't mean that there's not times where you want to put wood putty in a hole. Somebody says, hey, can you just put some wood putty in there? Little tip for wood putty when you're doing wood restoration. Again, another professional tip. A lot of people put wood putty, it always looks terrible. They put the sealer over top of it, the putty stands out. Don't put putty in a horizontal surface. The wood expands and contracts, just pop it out on a vertical surface, not so much. What you can do though is, say we're put the wood putty in wherever the carpenter bee damage was. Actually, it's not the carpenter bee damage. Carpenter bees go actually in, lay the eggs. The woodpeckers come and cause the damage getting to the eggs. So there might be some considerable damage on fascia, on spindles, balusters, that kind of stuff. What you can do, put in the wood putty, take your stain, like if it's a brown tone or a red tone, whatever it is, take a solid stain or a semi-solid stain, wood putty stainable, just put that on the wood putty, and now put your sealer on. Now when you put the sealer over top of it after it's been stained, now it looks like a knot. It looks something more natural, not the glaring wood putty that hasn't been stained. These wood putties are stainable. Stain them, put your sealer over top, it'll look beautiful. Okay, the key to being successful in exterior wood restoration is a maintenance plan and the ease of the future maintenance. If we're going to work really hard to get the deck, fence, whatever restored and back to where it should be, these people are paying a lot of money for that, then what we want to do is we want to reward ourselves and reward them. So future maintenance, you may come up with a maintenance plan that says, hey, we don't have to do the same thing we did this time, so maybe you offer a discount. Maybe it's 70% of the original price. So now they're rewarded. You're also rewarded because you did the work last time. You know it's just easy, it's much easier, just come back and clean and recoat now. Typically on a maintenance plan, if you're doing it correctly, horizontal surfaces are not the same as vertical. Horizontal surfaces wear twice as fast as verticals. So when we go back, we two-coat everything the first time. We go back, we two-coat all horizontal, single-coat vertical. Everything looks the same, and we're only doing about 70% of the work. You can change the numbers any way you want, but also they feel like they're getting rewarded in the future. The other thing too is by tying somebody into a future maintenance plan, you have a customer list, you have built-in business, you know what you're an idea. I mean, somebody could sell a house, somebody could move, you know, there's things that happen, but for the most part, you have a lot of built-in work. If I'm gonna do a lot of work, I wanna sure go back there in 2 years and provide them with a maintenance plan. So that also builds an asset to your business. It can be done in residential situation as well. Now you have to ask yourself, do I want to perform wood restoration as a sole part of the business, or I'm going to add it as a service? And then if you are going to add it as a service, whether you're a landscaper or a cleaning business or a pool company, a window washing company, you should treat it a little bit differently than your other services. We're not cleaning. So my recommendation would be ABC cleaning company or exterior cleaning, but we also offer specialty services, or we offer a specialty service in exterior wood restoration. Oh, you do? What's involved with that? Oh, we do expert wood restoration. Now you're separating that service, and by separating it, whether it's that add-on or whether it's your go-to in the main part of your business, some people like myself use exterior wood restoration and pressure washing as an add-on service. Either way, separated from a specialty service, you're telling people that it's going to be a little bit more money. That kind of gets you away from that. Again, restoration, more money. Specialty service, more money. Don't leave money on the table. Do I want to make wood restoration the focal point of my business? If you do, the one part that is easier is it's easier for me to sell pressure washing services that are less than the wood restoration than it is coming from the cleaning the house side of it to the wood restoration. Again, just make sure that you separate it as a specialty service however you're doing it. Estimating decks, fences, square footage, and the KISS method. I don't really have to go into the KISS method. If not, Google it for yourselves. But estimating should be quick and easy. It takes a lot of time for decks and fences. I'm just going to make it real quick and easy for you. And this is a good one because I usually put this in my class, and this just makes life so much easier. Most people, they're figuring out fencing, they say, what do you charge for linear footage? I get a linear footage and I da-da-da. But they have no idea. And you don't need to do that. That's one. Two, all of our products are based off of so many square foot per gallon. So if our manufacturers are recommending, say, 150 square foot per gallon of a coating, then we should be converting everything to square footage. Linear footage only makes you guess. If you have employees working for you and you're guessing, hey, I think I need 10 gallons on that, you send them with 8, you got a problem. You send them with 20 and it's only 10, you still got a problem because they're going to use 18. Just the way it works. Square footage gets you kind of dialed in. The other thing is, take that fence that's a 6x8, most of your fence is 6x8. That's 48 feet on one side. If I times it by 2, that's 96. That's both sides of the fence. I didn't include the post yet. So let's call it the KISS method. And why don't we just say 50 on one side, 100 on two. Count your panels, call it a day. I don't need to count linear footage. 25 panels, boom. Both sides, boom. Real easy. Same thing with a deck. A deck can be the same thing with the railing. They're 4-inch centers on balusters. The balusters are about 1 inch on each side. Open them up. It's just the same thing as if it was solid all the way around. And if you're spraying, you're probably going to spray in between the balusters. You're going to use more product anyway. So basically what we're doing with those balusters is just treat them as a solid piece. So let's say the deck is 10 feet out on both sides and 30 feet across. We have 50 linear feet of around the deck. Times 4 feet high, 50 times 4 is 200 times 2, 200 times 2 is 400 square feet. The deck is 30 by 10, that's 300. 700 total square footage. Divide by 150, I know how many gallons I'm going to use for that deck. Just make it the KISS method, make it simple. Don't count pickets, don't count balusters, don't count linear footage. Convert everything to square footage and make it simple. Quick tip. Okay, the wood home estimate, if you're doing wood homes. I throw this out there because I see a lot of people, not just in the restoration part, but they're cleaning wood homes. Cleaning wood homes, you might think, oh, it's no big deal. Just so you know, a big deal. I had to testify once. There was $500,000 damage done to a house from a pressure washer. Okay, what they did was the water got to the inside. The inside was stained and sealed. There was damage done that probably they didn't do when it comes to skylights, but there was scarring, so they got them for too much pressure as well. So all in all, what they did was they took all the contents of the house out. They put it in pods. Then they went in and they redid the home. They took the highest price or the highest bid from the insurance company did. So you can cause a lot of damage. So one of the things you want to do, you have to have access to the inside of that home. You want to be able to go in and look for any water damage. Ask if you can, do you mind if I take a picture of it? Don't take pictures in someone's house. If not, if you're even on the outside and you see any air gaps or water damage, take pictures of that. But you don't want to be responsible for it. One of the things we always put on our proposals is not responsible for pre-existing conditions. And we got that from legal advice. You should have that in your proposal. If there's a bad gasket, if they're on a door or a window's bad, that kind of stuff, you shouldn't be responsible for something that was bad that you didn't know about or that they didn't know about as well. Then when we do the cleaning or the stripping, we like someone to be home at the time. In case water does get in, we want to be able to take care of it. So we try to schedule it where someone can be there on that day. After that and the rest of the time that we're staining, sealing, or doing any of the other stuff, we don't need them home. How much stain do I need? Everything turned to square footage. We've already talked about that. Pricing, developing a price list. We want to be successful at wood restoration. We don't want to just be cleaning price. We don't want a staining price. We want to come up with every scenario. So whether it's cleaning and sealing, cleaning and staining. Somebody says, hey, what's the difference between sealing and staining? If you've done it, sealing is much easier. Penetrates, goes in the wood. Stains, as the more opaque you get, the more it's like a paint. It takes more time. It's more time consuming. If we're sanding, sanding has to be added to it. If we're stripping and not cleaning, that gets added to it. If there's multiple coats, that gets added to it. So come up with a price list, develop a price list, stick to the price list, and you won't leave money on the table. Discounting and negotiating. This is a specialty service. We're calling it a specialty service, but then we're going to discount it. Sometimes that doesn't really make sense a lot. And just a little philosophy on some of this stuff. A customer will say, oh, I've done the deck before. They're kind of discounting it. They may or may not be your customer depending on the business model, but they would do one deck even if they did it every 2 years. Most people, they'll do the deck one time and then they want you the rest of the time. They'll never do it again. That's usually the way it works. So they do a deck every couple of years. We're doing it all the time. We're doing hundreds of decks, thousands of decks. We're the experts at it. Your employees, if you have employees, they're doing more decks than the homeowner. So that's important. The other thing is when you're doing this pricing, I recommend everybody take it a little personally. When you say you're going to take $100 off of a job, that $100 is coming out of your pocket. It's coming out of your business. It's coming out of your equipment. I personally would rather give that $100 as a bonus to my employees. If I was going to discount anybody's work, and it's a philosophy in the business, I haven't understood why people will discount somebody they never worked for, but yet all of your customers that help pay for your car, your vacation, your home that you live in, why you don't offer a discount program for repeat business rather than discount someone who you've never worked for. So just a little food for thought, making money. A couple other tips. Fence guys, when you're doing wood, they always put the little tag on the fence. Don't be afraid to tag your projects. We do it maintained by Deck Restoration Plus. And we also put on there, in case they haven't called us, they don't answer the phone, somebody moved, a new homeowner's there, they can pull the tag off, it protects it, and they can see what it looked like before. They say, wow, I can't believe that, let me give those guys a call. So it's right there. I would recommend putting it in an inconspicuous spot, not somewhere where it's right in eye view, right in front of the deck. Another thing, we all try to be different now because we want to separate ourselves. We've talked a lot today about professionalism, making money, being profitable, understanding some of the new stuff that's going on out there, but sometimes we forget some of the easy stuff. And when we get to the end, we give somebody a bill and we want to get paid. One of the nice things to do would be, hey, how about a gift? And we could give them a citronella candle. Citronella candles you can buy in bulk. It's nice to be able to light a candle on the back deck. We put waterproof stickers on them. If you buy the Tiki or any of the other citronella candles, it says peel here. It says peel here because you can take the label off. You can put your own on. Waterproof label, sits on the deck all the time. Anybody comes over and says, hey, your deck looks great, who did it? You're marketing that way. You're also giving a nice little gift. It's just a nice little touch. You don't have to be a citronella candle, just food for thought. You're doing the unexpected, you're being different. Okay, exterior wood restoration is changing. It's becoming increasingly difficult to stay ahead of the curve and perform quality services that result in a profitable outcome. So what do we want to do? We want to stay ahead of the curve, and that is the opportunity. So I can't emphasize that enough. The opportunity is in the problems that people are having, in all these coatings, in knowing about all these tools. Staying ahead of the curve makes it easier. It makes it easier to get the money, to do the work, and so forth. So that's your opportunity. Upselling and other services. Teak furniture. A lot of people discount this stuff. Teak furniture is in a lot of hotels. It's at coffee shops. It's in people's, not just people's yards. A lot of people that have commercial properties, they will keep up with teak furniture often. Once you've restored it, you can come back to a light cleaning, put some teak oil on it, and just keep right on going. Set them up on a maintenance plan. You'd be surprised how much teak furniture is out there. Post caps. Post caps are another one a lot of people discount. It's very easy. Pressure treated pine is always the tough one. The 4x4 caps, they split. When they split, pieces fall off, they come off in half. One of the easiest things to do is to put new post caps on or upsell to the solar caps. But post caps are real easy. You get the price, what they are, the cost, show them which ones figure out which ones they want. You can get trifolds from your distributor that you would use. They pick them out, silicone them, pop them on. Another nice touch, just an upsell. Upsell when you're there, there's a lot of upsells you can do. Some of them are pretty easy. Media blasting is another one that's out there that if you get further into wood restoration, you may consider. There's also some dustless blasting that is going on. This is where the industry is also going, again, in some of the equipment and the tools. I don't want to go in depth. I could sit here for hours talking about this stuff, but know that media blasting and dustless blasting is out there, and that is another option to wood restoration. Stamped concrete restoration. We talk about wood restoration opportunity. A lot of times stamped concrete, again, I'm not going to go into how to do stamped concrete, but a lot of the stamped concrete comes right up to the pool, to the deck, and it's right there with the same customer. It's a lot of it, and a lot of the products that I've already discussed and talked about are used in stamped concrete restoration. And the demographic to the people, the most people that do stamped concrete restoration are homeowners, because the concrete installer who installed the stamped concrete usually doesn't do the restoration part, and they can't find somebody who does that. If you're providing wood restoration services for the deck and for the property, if you add stamped concrete, it's pretty good money, usually $3 to $10 a square foot, which is more than what you're going to get on most other services we offer. So something to look at. A couple of additional resources just to check out. We always want to hone our craft. We want to stay educated. There's some books out there that you can find. There's also some stuff on the internet that's real easy to take a look at. And basically, if you go through and get as much knowledge out of these as you can, what happens is when you're out there talking to the customer and you're giving an estimate, all your information, your knowledge is going to come out at some point. And the people are going to say to you, wow, this guy really knows his stuff. I shouldn't say guy. This person really knows their stuff. And then you'll get that, that feedback, that instant feedback a lot of times too. Wow, I didn't know that. And that leaves a lasting impression. So check out some of the resources. The Forest Products Laboratory is one. They do the standards for the industry, so you'll find a lot of information on there in their library. You have the Western Red Cedar Lumber Association is another good one. We have the Cedar Shake and Shingle Bureau for the people that do a lot of cedar shakes. We have the Forest Products Society, and then NADRA, the North American Deck and Railing Association. We do a lot of deck work. They have some great information too. So there's some additional resources you might want to check out. All right, and that's what I got for you. A lot of the stuff I talked about today is, you know, more advanced stuff, stuff that's coming out, stuff that's coming down the pike, stuff that you want to stay ahead of. I just emphasize, I can't emphasize enough that it's very important to stay ahead of the curve. Separate yourself in this service as far as restoration over some of the cleaning services that we offer. You'll see your average ticket go up, you'll see the dollars go up, you'll see your profit margins go up, and it'll also become a lot easier for you to do these jobs if you have the right equipment, tools, and products to do that. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you watching this video today.